Hey Collective, it's Al. I'm coming to you with another video that will be accompanying a post I'm releasing later this afternoon on LinkedIn surrounding a topic of gratitude in honor of the great holy holidays that we are entering now after Thanksgiving that's centered around the topic of love in particular and from the perspective of a parental figure, something like that can be represented in the piece that was like God or the great architect and whatnot. And the ultimate act of love, which is to sometimes let your children go and do what it is that they're going to do and arm them with as much information and rules and regulations and kind of warnings and so forth about what they can incur if they fall outside the lines of comfort zone and so forth, and how they go out into their pilgrimage. That in essence, it is truly the greatest act of love there can be, right? And what the piece really centers around is how much love is in the eye of a father or a mother who is watching their children and has given them all the skill sets they can possibly ever imagine in order to not only survive but thrive within the world that they have brought them into. And it takes a great deal of dedication and release to ultimately love your children and let them become who they're meant to be when they make their own choices, even if you have guided them to make possibly better choices. And so the piece really wanted to center around the introduction towards the end of the year that I was talking about with the cosmic vote and so forth, that we really need to prepare and find peace within ourselves as we head into 2025. But it really wanted to focus the energy on what it means to truly be a great parent. And it was by way of the focus of, say, God or the great architect or whatever you call him, her, it. And helping you understand that sometimes the greatest sacrifice you can make is to let your children make their own choices and their own mistakes. And that as much as we love our family and our friends, sometimes you have to allow them to experience pain and hurt in order for them to grow and prosper. And especially heading into the spectacle or the wild ride that 2025 will be, it was important for me to kind of introduce the last month of the holy holiday in a way that paid homage and honor to the dedication and the outright unconditional love that we do indeed experience in human form. And I wanted to make sure that we understood that you cannot fight the war for your children. All you can do is set them up to do what's best. And by the time the post was done, what I really wanted to focus on was the fact that sometimes, no matter how much you love a child or your children, they can put themselves in catastrophic situations or in positions that really, truly traumatize them. And you can't really take the hit for them because it's something that you had done the most you could to prevent. But the consequence comes to the actions they took. And how hard it is to be a parent in a world with so much chaos and confusion always surrounding us, from hypocrisy to greed to corruption to slave labor camp. I mean, like, there's all sorts of shit that goes on in our world. And the best we can do as parents or as people is to show up for our children in a way that's very nurturing and loving, but understanding that you can't always save everyone. And that is a truly terrifying aspect to the adulting process, which is you can give as much love and advice to humanity. And you can guide them as much as you can, but at some point you have to let go of your child's hand, armed with as much information as you could possibly give them, and then let them make their way. And pray and hope that they will choose the right path, knowing what could happen to them. But in the end, it is ultimately their decisions that will yield the results of what they meet as far as fate or destiny. And the reason I wanted to do that is because one of the things that happens when you are evolving, especially if you're a spiritual being, is you begin to have to discern what is true and what's not true for you. And you have to make your way against incomparable odds. And a lot of people get trapped in the materialism or in the 3D experience, and they dedicate their lives in the pursuit of finances instead of love. And so they end up feeling at the end of life sometimes that they missed out on the truth of what life was about, which is ultimately love. And what could be more unconditionally loving than a parent letting their children make their way forward? But one of the things that happens is once you're a spiritualist and you start to evolve and move forward, is you begin to realize something very interesting, which is you can't save everyone else, because the person you have become couldn't have become that person had you not made the mistakes and had the missteps that you did. You wouldn't have become who you are now. But on a collective scale, it can be a little bit more traumatic sometimes to bear witness to the changes that need to occur. Because you will find with most very accomplished people, whether it's in the material world or in the spiritual world, that they have come from ashes over and over again. They have made so many mistakes in their life that it's almost impossible that they've come to the point where now they stand upon the mountain in a firm setting. But you understand that their struggle is what made them who they are. And when they reach the pinnacle of their success, or when they arrive spiritually to the gates of heaven, or whatever you believe in, whatever your zenith North Star is, that the person that arrives there is the person who you knew would, you just wish that they had taken easier routes. But you understand the value of the information of what they've gained, and the wisdom and the grace and the love and the light that they carry, that they somehow still manage to make it through the maze or the school year intact. But it came at a great deal of sacrifice and a lot of blunders. And you don't then look at the person who makes it and go, I wish it would have been easier for you. Because you realize as a parent, you're almost even more proud of the fact that they fucked up so much. It's the underdog. Why do we love underdogs? It's programmed into us. It really is. But on a collective scale, it's a lot easier to take accountability for your own actions than to understand when tower moments and bad things begin to happen on a collective scale, which is what we are preparing you for 2025 and on. So essentially, one of the things that I wanted to really focus on with the video is not just regurgitate the same information that I had done in the written piece, which for those of you who are curious can go to my LinkedIn page to see it, but I wanted to expand upon it by talking about something that we've only talked about on a personal level, which is called the dark night of the soul. And the dark night of the soul is basically where your soul mirrors the same amount of love that the great architect has given you by allowing you the life experience to learn and grow and evolve and prosper, only it's now personal. It's between you and your soul. And what happens during the dark night of the soul, as we have come to understand and know collectively, is that your life is leveled. And when your life is leveled, you are ultimately put into the wilderness or the forest experience, whatever your faith house tells you it is. And you have to make your way. And it has to be based on faith, and it has to be based on a strong moral and ethical fiber. And somehow, against all odds, you are pit against the darkness that is within you, and you have to overcome it in a way to understand that you can never get rid of it altogether, but you can have it serve you, right? Your unconscious state is a part of your subconscious that is trying to help you navigate through your own shadows and make you accountable for your own actions so that you master yourself well enough to be of service to other people. And so the dark night of the soul is the facilitator that we have come to understand that really guides us in this way, but it is really hard. And for those of you who are more Christian-based, look at it at the standpoint of those who have to go through the 7 labors in order to pay off their debt. Those individuals go through hell and high water, and at some point the boss then releases them from that karma or that student debt or whatever it is that they have accrued over the choices they have made throughout their lifetime. But it is a devastating experience for a lot of people, because your soul is basically having a come to Jesus moment with you. And it's saying, if I'm going to get you out of the maze, if you ever expect to find freedom, true freedom, spiritual freedom, then you're going to have to face the darkest of shadows. And then when you do that, you're going to have to face other people's shadows reflecting and testing you on what you think you've overcome. That's all personal. 2025 is going to change that. And it's going to be very important for us to become the community that we need to be. Because it won't just be a dark night of the soul for you individually. It'll be a dark night of the soul for the collective. We as children have gotten ourselves in some very serious predicaments. Some of them have a lot to do with our longevity and whether we make it through this next transition or not. But it's on a collective scale. And if you guys have been paying attention to my work in particular, both on LinkedIn and YouTube, you have noticed that we have been quietly prepping everyone for the steps. I even said to you guys that 2020 was a reset, that was a dry run for what was to come. And then as we are going into 2025, I am preparing you all for the fact that there is a bigger stage that has been set that we as the spiritualists who have gone through the dark night of the soul can sense, because we are identifying with the darkness that is to come. Because the light has to make its way through the blocks. It has to make its way through the polarization. It has to find a way to bring it together. And since sometimes children can't figure it out for themselves because they're at different evolutionary stances, then sometimes something bigger has to occur that puts a lot of people under the gun in order to really help them push through, which can create a dark night of the soul for the species. Right? The Dark Ages was a dark night of the soul for that collective. It was one of the first ones that we have recorded history of because we were very documenting about it. But the truth is, this happened before. We've heard legends and stories and myths about civilizations that have been annihilated because they couldn't make the cut. But yet there was always catalysts, events that happened before that gave them the opportunity to come together. And so, not speaking to specifics, because I'm one of those people like, I don't like to read the last chapter of the book. I want to experience the book as I go. I don't know exact details as to exactly who does what, when, and where. But I will say that the piece was about love. And this piece, and as we move into this, is ultimately about love. The great architect, God, Allah, whoever you believe in, is betting that we can pull this off and is putting all the chips into it. It is up to us to band together and find our way forward because, as we know from looking into ourselves, facing one's shadow is one of the hardest things you're ever going to do in life because you cannot escape the truth of who you are. You can become a multi-billionaire and have all these hoes that you want, but it's not love, and you end up empty. It reminds me of that movie Soul, where the main character finally gets his dream life and then comes home and nothing has changed. He's still depressed. He doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know what's happening. He just knows that he has a lot of materialism where he hit a particular benchmark, but it never stops there. So we understand it on a personal dynamic level. We understand how devastating it can be when the rug is pulled from under you. It's the job that you really didn't want, but you needed it in your head in order to pay for whatever. And so you stuck with it for too long, and then suddenly you get fired from that. It devastates your life. But the next thing you get is you find a better job and you find a better opportunity from which to spring forth. And you suddenly, in that moment, realize that had not those towers happened in your life, had not divine intervention intermingled in your life, you would have gotten stuck. So as we prepare for 2025, and most of the work that we'll be following will be based on the final preparations with the results of the college vote and so forth. I will be speaking to it directly more on LinkedIn, probably not doing as many videos because it's a holy holiday. And for me, if you guys don't know, I firmly believe, I don't believe in Santa Claus, but I believe in the Holy Ghost. And I feel like this is his representation, just in a material form. Because you guys know I have this thing. Anything that's divine, the darker energies will pervert in some way in order to make money off of it. So instead of looking at it from Santa Claus' perspective, I look at it like the Holy Ghost, who's been aware of all of the good deeds and bad deeds you've done, can sometimes bless you, but it's a time of harmony and peace. But it is a resting point before what happens in 2025 and 2026. So understand that it's a lot easier for us sometimes to go through the work and go through the darkness on our own. And then once we've gained experience, look back on it and not really think much about it and think that other people have had it worse than we've had. And in that moment, there's something called grace and humility that bestows you, right? It falls upon you just like, well, I think that person's because you are going to downplay your own experience. But what won't be applicable is the ability to do that for a greater group of people that are going to go through it. People have been talking about spiritually the whole idea of the Great Awakening, which has a very toxic edge, right? Like the pendulum swung from complete willful ignorance to completely oversaturated woke culture, which is an overextension of the awakening, right? It's a knee-jerk reaction to trying to balance everything out because you can sense that things are shifting really badly. And so you try to almost overcompensate, and we get cancel culture and all that big bag of bullshit. And so they become equally as toxic as the ones who kept us in willful ignorance. And you find yourself now having to find your way. But on a personal level, all of us who are here that are registering with this particular video will understand that you are more willing to deal with it in your own life than you are to watch other people, and especially friends and family, go through it themselves. It's a lot harder to watch and witness the demolition of other people's lives in order to get them in right alignment, especially on a collective scale nationally, or even more so as a planet. It takes a lot more strength than one would imagine because it's not personal anymore. It's about all of us. And so we're going to need to really band together as we head into this. But I'm going to tell you, take the time this holiday season to really spend time with your friends and family and be grateful for every moment that you have. Because regardless of how bad it can get, because when shadow work happens, it's not usually pleasant, it's usually shocking. So no matter what comes at you, the ultimate message is it's still an act of love that something, somewhere cares enough about us to give us this last shot. Whether it's the last one technically or an ongoing series of tests, it takes a great deal of love to trust in your children that they will make their way. And so despite whatever is revealed to us in 2025, I found it imperative to remind you guys with a very polite video that it is the ultimate testament of love where a father and mother will let their children learn from their own mistakes. And let's say they have an entire planet made of children. You have to trust that the right relations will be established by those who will make the cut and that they will find their way. And that's an incredible trust test. And it's something that we all need to understand as we face these things. Because from tragedy and from chaos and from disorder comes a great deal of heroes, comes a great deal of leaders. It pushes the people who are at the lowest. Sometimes it moves the wheel to where they're on top, because they somehow manage to overcome all the obstacles and stand in their true power and then guide other people through. But it will be a reflection of the dark night of the soul, but from a civilization standpoint. And one of the things about the dark night of the soul is that it's very personal to who you are. For example, a billionaire who has a lot of money and has love may experience the dark night of the soul when suddenly he invests in the wrong thing and his money's gone overnight. That is really jarring to that particular person. But a person who's never had money will experience a dark night of the soul and maybe the death of people in their family, and that they will no longer have that community aspect and will feel isolated and alone more than they already were. A dark night of soul will impact each of us in society in different ways. For example, people who are very egoishly driven into having status and prestige and title in the material world. I'm all about business. I'm in the business of making business. Those people may have issues with the advent and the release of AI upon our world that takes away some of what they were gaining money from. And it kind of restructures society in a way where a lot of people will suddenly find themselves having to figure out what they're going to do next, possibly not having the skill sets required of the new era that's taking place. Because we know what the plan is. We know that there's something called Project 2025, and we know that there's stuff going on with the Project Blue, whatever it is. We know that those things are existing, but it's going to be how we interact and react to the stimuli around us that will predict how well we'll do. So my message to you is, we know as leaders and as spiritualists and as change makers what a dark night of the soul looks like on a personal level. What we're going to need to center our attention on is how do we help other people on a group dynamic, right? Because you can only be so poor, and then you become homeless. So what happens to the homeless when everybody else starts to go into strain? We don't just throw them away. So there's going to be a different skill set that will develop in the processes that are about to occur. But ultimately, it will be all in love that we're even going through it, right? If someone is just done with something, it ends. There's no question. You just cut off communications, you don't work with it, you don't give them challenges, you don't help them out anymore, you don't give them advice, you just let them be. You can't lead a dead horse to water, right? But there's so much love that we can feel in our world where we are having conversations with our higher selves that are not crazy. It's just your higher mind talking to you. That is engagement of a higher power or higher source, whatever your pattern recognition is, all of those skill sets that you are developing, whatever your sixth sense will be after we go through part of these challenges, they're going to be based out of love. It is basically that system of like we talked about with the 7 labors. In the end, in that story, if you remember from scripture, the father that Jesus was talking about, the father then turns around and does pay off the debt for the child because they did the work. And so it's important to understand that you're not in an actual desert experience. If you are a seeker or a student within the Great Earth Academy that is working towards bettering not only yourself, but being of service to the collective and to the world around you, then you know there will be light that goes with you because you are that vessel. But understand that it's a little bit different when it happens on a group dynamic, because suddenly you have a bunch of people going through it all at once. And I'm not talking about just groups of them. I'm talking about entire cities and towns and civilizations, like suddenly uprooted and things changing so quickly that it can level their playing field to the point where they feel almost defeated. And our task at that point will then be to be of upliftment to them and to help them understand that you have been through it on a personal level. And so though you may not be able to help everybody, you are there for those who actually are doing the work that is required because they will find you. But understand that it's still an act of love. Basically, the way I would phrase it is the great architect believes in us so much that he's willing to throw us in the fire. And if you're a person of faith or even a person of science who believes in humanity, then we know we can overcome whatever obstacles and whatever is coming our way. It's a guaranteed event for us because we have something called faith. But 2025 and 2026 will be very, very, very upheavaling. You know, it's interesting to me when I always think about the great architect, what you guys call God or whatever you call that energy, that when shit goes down and we make mistakes, we then look at our parents and go, you did this to us. And the parent is looking and going, I didn't do shit. I gave you the book. I gave you the lesson plan. I gave you your challenges, and I asked you to stay in communication with me, none of which you did. And now you get yourself in a situation where you're in debt with whatever. I mean, I think the story was like the mob or whatever, something to that degree. And then he's looking and going, I can't hold your hand forever. And as a civilization, even less. Child trafficking, child mutilization, people getting shot up. Y'all can't figure the most basic shit out. You want me to fix it? Because if he does fix it, then all hell breaks loose, right? Because if the great architect is indeed back, then everybody should be on fucking notice. Because it's like, you know who it is when you see him. And if you see him, then you better fucking, if you're in misalignment, you better run like hell, right? So we're getting an opportunity to band together, stop the polarization, and figure out a way forward without the left hand of God smacking us upon the face. But it is ultimately the act of love, right? Have you ever noticed, like, you'll tell a child when they're really young, please don't run into the street, you can get hit by a car. A child that's not paying attention may go towards the curb, but what the hell do you do as a parent? You immediately grab their shirt or their hair, whatever is the quickest to get them out of the line of danger, and you yank them back, and you go, what the hell were you thinking? And they're crying, and you abused me. I didn't abuse you, I just saved your ass. It's perspective. But understand the ultimate act of love is to let your children grow up and become who they're meant to be. And on a collective scale, humanity is facing those tests. And as we prepare and lean into it, there is a reason for it. And through December, we'll be talking about it. But take the opportunity to really value your community. Build those relationships that you know are important to you. Some of you are going to be handed into divine unions or partnerships. You're going to be building things that need to exist by the time that all of this goes down. And you're going to have to think quick about it. And you're going to have to trust your intuition. You're going to have to trust your heart over what you see. Because anyone can lie to you. But only you can stand in your power and know it's a lie. And instead of judging them for their lies, figure out what's the best course of action for not just yourself, but in this new incoming era, this new reset. Understand what's best for other people. Because some of you are going to be tasked with not only dealing with the shadow of yourself, but you will have tests of other people facing their shadows that you love that may not be able to pull it off. And so you're going to have to make a choice in those moments. It's going to be really rough, which is, do I sink with the ship? Or do I get on the boat that's being offered to me and my family, and do I go? Without losing your compassion and empathy for the other person. We're not leaving anyone behind. But again, you can only parent or be brotherly or sisterly to someone for so long before you realize that they might just be sinking. And what do people do when they sink? They will grab onto anybody to stay afloat, and they may then drown the other person. So this is the big boy test. I remember I've been saying to you guys, many of you are taking your college entrance exams spiritually. And some of you are having to venture out into new terrain, and you're not very comfortable with it, and it seems a little foreign to you. But if you don't make the journey, then you're subject to have to go down with whatever ship you're associated with. And that's a personal choice. That is what free will is. But from a parental standpoint, what I'm just forewarning is don't then turn around when shit goes down incorrectly, when shit goes down the wrong way, and then blame the higher ups for the choices that their own children made, right? You can't do that forever. We have all the information we need. And those of us who are students or teachers' aides or whatnot, we're on the ground for a reason. Whether people pay attention to us or think we're crazy or whatever is irrelevant to our scenario. All we can do is be ourselves and be honest and just kind of prepare them and be like, there's a lot of change ahead. And what I've learned is that a tower moment to me does not exist anymore. It's just a lesson. And what is the task of a lesson? To convert it into a blessing. So anytime anything comes towards me that kind of throws me off a little bit or whatnot, I'm still on the mountain. I'm just looking at it going, okay, well, why did it happen? Instead of being my emotional realm going, oh my gosh, help me, why is this happening to me? That victim mentality I don't have anymore. So instead what I do is I immediately look at it and go, huh, okay, I'm in misalignment somehow. But I don't take it personally because I realize that a parent who's spending this much time trying to teach me and is trying to invest so much information in me and so much wealth of imagination and creativity is investing in me. That's love. That is an act of love. Now, what I do with it is entirely up to me. How many of you have beautiful children who are incredibly gifted as musicians, but they give up on their dream? You did everything you could to cultivate their dreams, but they didn't put the motion and the action into what needed to happen. That is not your failure. You did your best. It's a relay race. Every generation is meant to do better than the last generation. And as we have all throughout the history of the Earth Academy, we have learned that we have different cycles that we repeat or that we break free of. And what is about to happen will be on a collective scale from what I am gathering intuitively. And you're going to have to trust that intuition. A mother's intuition will prevent a child from getting hurt because she will immediately see out of nowhere, she'll sense that they are in danger, and she will change the outcome for that person, but in the end, the child still has the possibility of still going out and doing the exact same thing. So I'm just saying to everyone, as we head into this season, into this new epoch, if you will, there's going to be a lot of challenges. And when challenges hit an audience that is not watching carefully, is not prepared for it, it will feel like a tower. But it's just another lesson within the Great Earth Academy. And whether you pass or fail is entirely up to you. I don't even believe in passing or failing, but what do you garner from it? A lot of us, not a lot of you, but a lot of us are, for whatever reason, competing for something. I don't know what you're competing for, but you're competing for something. Some of you believe it's power. Some of you believe it's money. Some of you believe it's fame. Some of you believe it's this or that. But how does that serve other people? This is a collective test. And 2025 will force us towards each other. That's all I know clearly. But what I will say is instead of waiting for it, put the community forward now. If you know other people that are working in community dynamics, we're trying to strengthen people who are in spiritual poverty, or people who are going through actual poverty, or you see women who are suffering, or you want to do something with child services to protect all the children, or how about fucking figuring out who all these child predators are that keep having all these fucking islands? Like, there are all of these things that we can be focusing on to put us in right relations with other people who think like we do. And they strengthen community, they don't break it down. They're not political. They're not selling their ass to whoever's going to give them the most money, and that's where their politics. These are actual people that you can see in the 3D that are guiding you because of the hell they've been through. I'm going to tell you guys right now, I was in the worst alignment you can possibly imagine when my Dark Night of the Soul started. And I'm somehow here. And that is by the grace of the great architect. And someone asked me recently why I believe so heavily in something that I cannot see. And I said, because they saw me when I couldn't see me. I was worthless to everyone in the world, but something somehow made me stand here now. And I stopped being drug addicted. I stopped being a sex addict. Something changed within me. And that energy is what I believe in. But it took the entire demolition of my life. It took just having everything ripped from me because I'm hard-headed, and many of you are hard-headed. So if you're hard-headed and you're one of those kids like me who have one or two choices, who's too smart for your own good, you're going to test the waters, and they know that, then you're going to get harder tests. But you're also not going to be somebody who doesn't test anything and doesn't have any freedom or free will and is so stuck in a rigid... Because then if anything happens to you, it shatters your world like that. Whereas a person who kept sticking their finger in the socket learns how to not be shocked anymore. They're like, oh, all right, I probably should have taken a better course of action. Sorry. There's humor and love and light, but you're going to need each other. Remember, a house divided shall fall, and that is the aim. Right? Whatever you believe this energy to be. They have names, but for those of you who aren't adept, I'm not going to go into it, but there's an energy that is remnants of the war in the heavens. And that energy really believes that they know what's best for humanity, and their entire thing is to break us down in order to make sure that we are under their thumb because they know what's best for us. That takes away freedom and it enslaves the race, but they really believe that they're doing the right thing. So a lot of that's going to be playing out in different nations across the world, and it may get really dark for a little while, but where there's darkness, there's light, and we are going to be the light. And those of you who find your way against incredible odds are going to be the next class of students who move into the master's program. And then you will then become a master who becomes a teacher and starts sharing information and guiding other people forward in some of the darkest of times, right? And you evolve as you go, but you go through tests. And this is just in preparation of the ultimate act of love, which is I'm going to have a come to Jesus conversation with all of you in preparation of something really beautiful that will happen, which I'm not going to go into. But when that appears, you're going to be stronger than you ever thought you could be. Because whatever you believe in loved you enough to let you make the mistakes and choices that we have all made. And so as we faced it individually, we now look at it and we go, yeah, but my story's not that bad. Meanwhile, everybody else is looking and going, I don't know how the fuck you survived that. But you don't see that because you made it through. And so now we're going to be put into an experience where a great many of us will be forced back together in a very good way, but it might be traumatic to a lot of people. Again, it just depends on who you are and what you hold value with. If you are a person of faith, you know that the great architect spends a lot of time getting to know what really means something to you and will drive you forward with those things. But in the end, do not be mistaken. Don't look up to the heavens and blame everyone else for our own choices as individuals or even more so as a civilization, because we got ourselves into the mess. It's kind of like when you look at people who want to go chasing the Holy Grail, or they go looking for Pandora's box and then open it and then, I didn't know, and then they throw a hissy fit because they brought doom upon humanity. They didn't do that. That was that person. It was a person who decided that they were more important than everyone else. So understand there's going to be a lot of group dynamics that are going to play. But like I've been telling you guys, from this will rise the turquoise leadership. And this leadership will be pinnacles of hope. And it is the only thing that trumps fear and all of the confusion that may happen as we head into this next cycle. I had told you guys, if a species can't find their way of their own accord, sometimes you create dynamics from whatever you believe in that make them work together. So we as a collective have a choice as we go into it. We can either start looking for each other and working with each other ahead of time to have something in place, or we can just wait till the last minute and then try to play catch up when it happens. That's entirely up to us. But in the end, it's not the divine or God or Allah or whoever you believe in they're not the ones causing this. Their children made some choices, and those choices have consequences. And now as a peer group, as a cohort within the academy, we're going to have to make our way through those choices. And from that, leaders, visionaries, pioneers, magical beings will emerge, unicorns, whatever you fucking believe in. I mean, all of us have such an array of ideologies and belief systems that I honor all of them. So whatever your focus is will be of major importance to how you thrive through it. Because again, a tower moment is only true for people who didn't see it coming. There's nothing that is not already known about what's ahead of us. It's just about how did we get ourselves into the situation. But there's the responsibility. We got ourselves into it, not everyone else. Right? It's just something really important to do. And it's important to ground our energies as we head into this. And I hope this message makes sense, because ultimately the point was, it is the greatest act of love to let your children grow up. And they're going to make their choices. And especially if you have a large family, one of the hardest things you can do is sometimes let someone really fuck up so badly that they can't make it back. But you don't take away their free will from that, because at some point you have to let them be accountable for their own actions. And that speaks the same as we go into this next cycle for us as a group, right? We're so individualized and so forced apart, and people we're falling for this polarization, anything to keep us separated, because they know that if we band together and get ahead of it, that they will lose immediately. Remember, enough of us are in right relations. You really think the boss isn't going to put his smackdown on it? They're hoping to keep us divided, because the more of us who are ready, the more the great architects exist in the eyes of the beholder and is watching everything. And that is really important, especially if you can get them all looking at each other and working together. Remember the great dilemma, the game dilemma that they have that I spoke about a couple months ago, where no matter how corrupt the system is, it only takes a couple of players to start actually working together to completely change the game. Right before a game gets scrapped, it just takes 2 or 3 people finally putting their swords aside and looking at each other and saying, wait a minute, I like what you're doing. What are you doing? Oh, I want to work with you. Okay, let's work together. And suddenly other eyes begin to look at it and go, wow, we were so in suffrage. It was all, we were in hell. And suddenly these people start to find a way to make it better for everyone. They start to uplift me. Now I'm curious. Then they get into the fold. And then suddenly the next band of people are like, wow, that group is really having a good time. I don't know how. Like, we thought that this was doomed. We thought society was gone. We thought humanity would fail. We thought, and meanwhile, there's this group of people who are like, no, we're going to be fine. I mean, you can come with us or you can stay behind. That's not really up to me. But we're going to be working on how to prepare people. You know, we can see the issues with AI. We don't fear AI, but there are going to be ramifications. What happens to all those people who lose job functionality? Well, let's get ahead of that. Or how about, okay, we see the people are so polarized and can't even come together. How do we bring them together? Workshops? Do we do more lecturing? Do we do more podcasts? Do we connect the right podcasters with each other? You know, like their Rogue is a shit stir. But people can't stop personalizing it. They call him stupid and all this stuff. And I'm going, yeah, but without his shit stirring, we wouldn't be having some of the conversations that are needing to happen in order to bring each other to the actual topics that are being hidden. Lex Friedman, that's another example. It's uncomfortable to face one's shadow on an individual scale, but to then be the beam of light that then represents the shadow of society and brings it into forthright is a hero. That's a leader. That is the next epoch, kings and queens. Because they're doing the one thing that most of us can't do, which is think about other people, not just ourselves. And that takes an incredible amount of strength. So as we head into this and I close this out, let me reiterate. In the end, it is the ultimate act of love to let your children grow up and make the choices they are meant to make. They will make mistakes and some of them will be dire. But it is the ultimate act of love to let go of their hand and let them become who they are. And I'm willing to bet that if you're listening to message, you're going to be one of those people who will make it through it. And you not only will make it through it, but will be grateful and thankful as I am for everything you have incurred. Because in the end, he made you so strong and rare that the world will take notice of you. But you had to go through the fire. And that's all over the Bible. It's all over Scripture. It doesn't matter what religion you belong to, whatever house of faith you belong. You have to walk through the fire to be purified. And so when you have a group of people who don't even want to be purified, and they're possibly sinking the rest of everyone down, a set of events happens, and they are forced to walk through it, whether they believe in him or not. But do not betray yourself in blaming everyone else for the choices we have made, right? Even in the political arena, here in the States, we had an election. Half the population is all pissed off, and I'm looking at that side of the population. I'm going, you did part of it. I mean, you handed this to them. And now you're mad at everybody else, claiming everybody else is stupid. And I'm like, but if they're stupid, why are you the loser? This is about getting beyond our ego and our emotional states and looking at it from a higher perspective and going, okay, we could have done something better. Instead of blaming everybody else, what I'm saying is be more proactive and accountability and be like, oh shit, I probably shouldn't have called them all stupid or idiot. Like, you know what I mean? Like, there's a place and a moment where you have to rethink your strategy, and we're at a very pinnacle point in our trajectory where a great many of us will go forward and then a lot of people will be left behind. And that's completely free will, freedom, right? We're fighting against loss of freedoms. And the reason we're losing freedom is because other people think that they know what's best for everyone else. But the truth is that if you do that, you imprison the race and you don't win. An imprisoned race does not go forth. It's a death sentence, and we all know it. Why would a simulation or whatever you believe in be going if it's corrupt and there's nothing they can do? They'll just end it. They've done it before. We know it. I mean, civilization, dinosaurs, everybody has been wiped out. And you can call it happenstance. But if there's even a remote chance of hope that we can do something about it, even if other people think we're mad as hell or crazy, then who's the crazy one if we avoid calamity, right? In the end, it's entirely up to us, but I'm just saying as we prepare for this is a group test. We have had the dry run from 2020 to 2025, and a lot of the skill sets and the knowledge and wisdom you carry now will be very beneficial to the next wave that will be shoved and shaken quite viscerally into awakening. And it's already begun, with one side being completely blindsided by this. And I'm just like, I don't know how you were blind. But I mean, I'm not laughing at them. I'm just choosing humor over sadness, because one of the things that happens when you're truly sad is you think and you don't move into action. But if you keep it a little bit lighter, where your heart is lighter than a feather, then you're able to fly over it, like to coast over it, and you don't fall into depression or anything else, which will be a very big part for next year, right? A lot of things when shit hits the fan, it's important to remember that sometimes, even in bowling, you have to set the pins up so that everybody can see them and then hit the strike and knock them down. You have to trust the universe. And as we go forward, remember, it is in love that we even have the blessing to be alive. And especially in this season as we prepare for what's to come. Take the time to really celebrate and love each other. Build your communities, get ahead of the curve. Just know that you are strong enough, and if you're here, that he must love you. He, she, it must love you. Because otherwise, they would just remove you. This is a test for the strongest, but also the weakest. Because the wheel turns for everyone. And sometimes when you give someone so much that they have to overcome, they become fucking ironclad giants. Because they made it. And so for them, they look like the weakest, but they become the warrior because they never had a shot in hell. And yet there they are standing in front of you. And when you see them, you know it. And a lot of you are going to be them. I want you guys to have a wonderful day. Good night.